In the dead of winter, 1959, high in the Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union, a tent was found slashed open, not from the outside, by a predator or an enemy. It was cut from the inside. 9 experienced hikers had fled their only shelter, running into a landscape where survival is measured in minutes. Some were found with crushed ribs and fractured skulls, yet their skin showed no signs of a fight. One was missing her tongue, another, his eyes. What kind of force can break bones without breaking skin, and instill a terror so profound it makes 9 seasoned experts choose a certain death over staying in their tent? This isn't just a ghost story, it's a medical detective story, written in the snow. To understand the mystery, we first have to understand the victims. They were not amateurs. The group, mostly students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, was led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov. They were all Grade 2 hikers, on their way to achieving Grade 3, the highest certification in the Soviet Union. Their goal was Ural Mountain, a name that in the local Mansi language means "don't go there." Their journey began with the familiar camaraderie of any expedition. Diaries recovered from the tent speak of singing songs, playful debates, and a deep respect for the wilderness they were entering. One of the last entries, from Zinaida Kolmogorova, reads, "I wonder what awaits us on this trip. What will happen?" On February 1st, they began their ascent of Kolatsya Kol, or Dead Mountain, a slope leading towards Otorten. Worsening weather, including a cyclonic storm, forced them to deviate west and set up camp on the exposed mountainside. It was a questionable decision. Experienced mountaineers knew that camping on an open slope was risky, but they were strong, well-equipped, and together, inside that tent, they prepared a meal and settled in for the night. It would be their last. The group was due to send a telegram on February 12th. When it never arrived, no one was immediately concerned. Delays were common in such expeditions, but as days turned into a week, the families began to panic. A search party, composed of volunteer students and teachers, was dispatched on February 20th. For 6 days, they found nothing. The vast, indifferent wilderness of the northern Urals had swallowed the hikers whole. Then, on February 26th, a pilot spotted it, a dark shape against the white slope of Dead Mountain. It was the tent, but it was wrong, collapsed, half buried in snow, and unnervingly quiet. The search party approached with a growing sense of dread. Inside, they found the group's belongings neatly arranged. Shoes were lined up by the entrance. A half-eaten meal sat frozen, a flask of vodka untouched. Everything was in its place, as if the occupants had just stepped out for a moment. But the hikers were gone, and the side of the tent facing away from the camp, down the slope, was sliced open. Outside, a story began to unfold in the snow. A trail of footprints, 8 or 9 sets, led away from the camp. Investigators noted something medically bizarre. Many of the prints were from bare feet, socks, or a single boot. In -30°C weather, this wasn't just illogical, it was a physiological death sentence. The tracks didn't show signs of a struggle. They weren't running from each other. They walked with a grim purpose, downhill, towards the tree line, and into the dark. The trail of footprints led the search party 1.5 kilometers down the slope, to the edge of the forest. There, under a towering Siberian cedar tree, they found the first 2 bodies, Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko. They were barefoot and dressed only in their underwear. The cause of death seemed obvious: hypothermia. When the body's core temperature drops, blood is shunted away from the extremities to protect vital organs. This is why their hands and feet had been burned. They had tried desperately to stay warm. The skin on their knuckles was stripped away, and the branches of the cedar tree were broken up to 5 meters high. They had been trying to climb the tree, perhaps to get a view of their tent, or to escape something on the ground, but the strangest medical clue was their state of undress. This points to a chilling phenomenon known as paradoxical undressing. In the final stages of severe hypothermia, the victim can experience a sudden, intense sensation of being hot. The constricted muscles that were trying to conserve heat suddenly relax, sending a rush of warm blood to the cold skin. Confused and delirious, they feel like they are burning alive, and frantically remove their clothes, hastening their own death. 3 more bodies were found between the cedar and the camp: Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, and Slobodun. Their positions suggested they were trying to crawl back to the shelter they had so desperately fled. Rustam Slobodun was found to have a small skull fracture, but doctors concluded it was not a fatal injury. For these first 5, the story, while tragic, seemed medically plausible. A panicked flight, followed by the inexorable, confusing march of death by freezing. But the search was not over. 4 hikers were still missing, and what the investigators found next would shatter any simple explanation. For more than 2 months, the fate of the remaining 4 hikers was a mystery. Finally, in May, as the snow thawed, a searcher discovered their makeshift grave. 75 meters from the cedar, buried under 4 meters of snow, they had dug a small den, lining the floor with branches. Here they found the last 4, Lyudmila Dubinina, Alexander Zolotaryov, Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, and Semyon Zolotaryov, and their injuries made no sense. Thibault-Brignol had a severe skull fracture. Dubinina and Zolotaryov had multiple, symmetrical rib fractures. The doctor performing the autopsy compared the force required to a modern-day car crash. This was massive internal trauma. Yet, crucially, there were no corresponding external injuries. No bruising, no cuts, no soft tissue damage. It was as if they had been squeezed by an immense, inhuman pressure. And then there was the most disturbing discovery of all. Lyudmila Dubinina was missing her tongue, her eyes, and part of her face. The official report stated this was likely post-mortem scavenging by small animals, as the body had been lying in a stream within the den. But for the public, and for many investigators since, this explanation has never felt sufficient to explain the sheer horror of the scene. One final, strange clue. Some of the victims' clothing was found to be radioactive. The levels were low, but it added yet another layer of high strangeness to an already impossible puzzle. The official Soviet investigation concluded that the hikers died from a compelling natural force. The case was closed. This compelling force is widely believed to be an avalanche, but this theory has significant medical and logical problems. A slab avalanche could explain the crush injuries, but the tent wasn't buried, just collapsed. And the footprints leading away were calm, not frantic. It doesn't explain why they ran so far, or why they never turned back. Something pursued them, or they believed it did. This leads to a more exotic, but scientifically plausible theory: infrasound. Certain wind conditions moving over a specific topography, like a mountain pass, can create a Kármán vortex street, generating sound waves below the level of human hearing. Infrasound is known to have profound physiological effects. The specific frequency of 7 Hz resonates with the body's organs. It can induce feelings of nausea, breathlessness, and a profound, baseless sense of dread and panic. Could a sudden blast of infrasound have caused the group to experience a simultaneous, irrational panic attack, convincing them they had to get out of the tent at all costs? It's a compelling explanation for the initial flight, but it doesn't explain the massive internal injuries or the radioactivity. This leads to theories of a military cover-up. The area was known for secret weapons testing. Strange orange spheres, believed to be missiles or rockets, were reported in the sky by other groups in the region that same night. Could a concussive but non-lethal weapon have created a pressure wave strong enough to cause the internal injuries without breaking the skin? This could explain the trauma, the radioactivity, and the immediate, panicked evacuation. But it remains pure speculation, buried under decades of official denial. Avalanche, infrasound, military test. Each theory explains a piece of the puzzle, but none explains it all. The avalanche explains the injuries, but not the flight. The infrasound explains the flight, but not the injuries. The military theory explains both, but lacks any hard evidence. What we are left with is a story about the terrifying fragility of the human body and mind when confronted by the unknown. 9 people, at the peak of their physical health and expertise, walked into the wilderness and were broken by a force that, to this day, has no name. Their story is not just a mystery, it is a profound medical and psychological question mark, frozen in time.